Hello, everybody. This is Veterans Roundtable. My name is Joseph Loudon. Wanted to tell you a little bit about the Veterans Roundtable, the purpose of it, and why we're here. So the Veterans Roundtable was originally created by myself, Joseph Loudon, Jeremy Anderson, and Adam Baratz. And we wanted to try everything we could to give back to the service members that are coming after us, because we have all transitioned. And I let them know that the veteran community is here to support them. So the Veterans Roundtable is all about service members, veterans, and the veteran organizations that are there to support them. We will go into more detail, I'm sure, in further videos about that purpose. I wanted to give you a little bit about information about myself. I served 4 years in the Navy. I was an aviation structure mechanic. I transitioned out of the military in 2017. And been out for almost 2 years now. My transition was very difficult. We'll say it. That's pretty the easiest way to say it. It was very difficult for me. I wasn't very planned out. I found out in a very short amount of time on deployment to Okinawa, Japan, that, hey, you've got about 3 months left in the Navy and you're going to not have a job. So I'll turn it over to Jeremy, kind of let him do his intro. Well, I thank y'all so much for coming on and give us some time to let Ken also introduce himself.
So, like Joseph said, Jeremy Anderson. I left the Navy in 2016. Went into the manufacturing industry. The Navy was the best thing that ever happened to me. Just really gave me so many great relationships, good people, good skills, all that stuff. I was a Navy engineman, so Cummins diesel engines and Mercury motors, turning wrenches, that kind of thing, running maintenance work centers. A lot of cool places, a lot of great people. But, we, like Joseph said, we have Ken today, Ken Price. He's a Navy senior chief down in Pensacola, Florida. I'm up here in Indiana, so good for him. He is an Aviation Electronics Technician. And with that, I'll kind of roll it back over to Joseph and let him get Ken started with a story.
So, Ken, if you will, Jeremy, thank you. And like I said, always a pleasure for my buddy. Ken, if you will, tell us a little bit about kind of your story and your experiences and how that kind of ties into why you wanted to be on the Veterans Roundtable.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Like I said, my name's Ken Price. I joined the Navy in June of 1996. I grew up in Kentucky. I was a military kid. I was actually born in Germany, but I grew up primarily in Kentucky near the area of Fort Knox. Started out in the Navy as a sonar technician on submarines. My first 6 years in the Navy spent doing that. I got to my, at the end of my first deployment on my second submarine, I had a medical issue and I had to change jobs. So they gave me the option, either change jobs or get out. So I thought, I like the Navy, love the Navy, I'm going to stay in. And I changed jobs and I became as an aviation electronics technician. Now, because I was an E6, I was already pretty high up, first class petty officer. I didn't get any initial training. I got basically what they call a direct conversion, where one day I was a sonar tech, the next day I was an avionics tech. So I had to relearn my job. I really, even though I was in a position where I was supposed to be in charge, I had to relearn my job. So I relearned my job, progressed through a series of different assignments, and now I'm at my final assignment as the Senior Chief Avionics Technician at the Center for Naval Aviation Technical Training here in Pensacola, Florida.
Yeah, I want to pick out a couple things from what you just said that I think have a lot of value both to service members and civilians that maybe don't have a lot of experience with veterans in the workplace and what that transition looks like. You talk about relearning a job, and that's, your case was kind of an extreme example where you literally switched jobs, as far as what your skill set was. But even if you don't do that, you're switching duty stations every 3 to 4 years. You're going to a new place where new skills are required, and that's just normal. That adaptability, you develop certain transferable skills that translate to anything, and you have a learn from the ground up mentality that you develop, and like you said, you step into a new role and you learn from the bottom, and you can't lead unless you can follow, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of value there and service members need to understand you bring that to the table. That adaptability is huge. So a mentor told me recently, and I like this analogy, and you've done it within your career, and now you're about to do it post-military, where you're at a mountaintop. You've climbed to the top of the mountain. You're a Navy senior chief, but you understand that there's a mountaintop in the distance in the civilian world that you can see, and you know where you want to go, but you're going to have to crawl through the valley to get back up there. You're going to have to climb the mountain. You can't just go to the next mountaintop. So there's a lot of value in your story there that I just really liked when I heard it. So.
There's one thing that I want to say kind of on that same topic that I think is really huge, and we understand it, I think, as service members, and we almost kind of forget it, that we work so hard to put on rank, and we work so hard to lead and everything else. But then when life throws you a curveball, kind of like with Ken, I can't even speak from experience because I didn't have to go through what Ken did, but I had leadership when I was in my opinion, one of the greatest leaders I ever had the ability to work under and train from. He had switched jobs, I think, as an E6 also, and he came from the medical field to the aviation field and brought so much perspective to where I was at that there's a quote, and I say it to a lot of people. I think I might have even said it yesterday. The measure of a man is not when he is on top of the mountain, but when the mountain is on top of him. And that quote kind of got me through all the transitions and the adversity that I went through after the uniform and during the uniform and before the uniform. And I think that really is a testament to the military as a whole, and kind of, really puts Ken in a spot that you can really admire him, because he had to go through that transition. And in the military, as we all know, when you put on E6, you're expected to be, your military bearing is on point, you're leading people, you're teaching sailors or Marines or soldiers or airmen how to become better of whatever they are. And to have to go back from basically to square one to learn a job and still be able to hold that bearing and that everything else, that's a testament. So I wanted to make sure that we really pointed that out on Ken's situation before I went over to question 2, which was, Ken, what were you wanting to do after the military? You can tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, and if that's something that you want to do when you get out, kind of those transferable skills.
All right. So what I'm doing now, I'm a training program manager. I have cognizance over all of the aviation electronics training in the Navy and the Marine Corps. So that's a lot of courses at a lot of different training sites and a lot of moving pieces all the time. So, but what it also happens to be what I love to do. Mm-hmm. So one of the big parts of my job that I love to do, that I love, is the fact that we are constantly analyzing and evaluating how relevant and how good our training is. And what I mean by that is our training matching what the technicians are actually doing out there in the fleet, or is it enough? And when we get a new piece of equipment, we have to evaluate that from the ground up. And so to be able to constantly to be able to do that takes a degree of insight that's really applicable across any industry. When you look at what we do, what you do as an aviation structural mechanic, or what Jeremy did as a engineman, those were jobs, and those jobs have a series of duties and tasks that are required to complete those to do those jobs successfully, and also that requires a set of knowledge, skills, and abilities to perform those duties and tasks. Now, if you take that into the civilian world, the same principle applies. That's the basic. That's the basics of learning and development in any industry. So whether
Yeah.
you're building washing machines or you're providing a service, that's still the same. So
Yeah.
I've oriented my education and my experience toward that because I love to do it. And that's what I want to do when I leave the Navy. So the next position I have a goal in mind. So my goal is a major corporation or organization. I can't come from being Senior Chief Ken Price to Ken Price Director of Training at Company X. But
Yeah.
what I can do is put myself on a path to become Ken Price Director of Training at Company X, however many years from now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a couple big things I like about what you just said, and we've discussed this before, but you figured out what you love doing. So that's huge. You've set a goal for yourself and understand that you're going to have to do certain things to get there. One of the biggest things that we run into in the military veteran community is people they don't know what they love doing. They just want to, I just want to provide for my family. Well, you got to be a little more, you got to think a little different, a little more than that. You know, you got to know what you love doing, what you want to do, and you have to set clear goals for yourself. So what advice would you give somebody who's, you know, in a similar situation as you, but they're struggling to figure out what they love doing? They're struggling to set goals for themselves, because we run into that so much, and you've got it. So I'm just curious how that clicked for you, and how you know what you love doing, and how you set clear goals for yourself.
So the military teaches us how to do a lot of things, and we are trained to do a lot of things well. And a lot of people, and I see it, and I was one of them, approach their transition from the perspective of, I don't care what it is, as long as I'm qualified to do it. That's the kind of job I want. I can do anything. Well, the example I heard, and the example I give is, well, you were taught, you were trained very well on how to scrub floors and scrub toilets, because we all had to do it. Is that what you want to do when you retire, or when you leave the service after your enlistment's up? Probably not, unless you just love being a janitor. But so my advice would be to look back on your career, whether it's 4 years or 24 years, and look at that time when you looked forward to going to work, looked forward to it, to coming to the ship or to the hangar every day, and think about what you enjoyed doing while you're in the military, because all of us have done jobs that we don't enjoy doing. I can tell you my last job before I had this one, I didn't enjoy. It was 2 years of me not enjoying it. I still did it well, but it was 2 years of me not enjoying it. But think about what you enjoy, and think about how that added value to your life, but then also how you doing that job added value to the organization. Because that's going to be the key that unlocks from going, well, I see all these things I do and I don't care what I do, to this is what I want to do, and now I can later my path, my transition to doing that.
Yeah, that's one thing that I want to speak about, Ken, because the guy that you were just talking about that was like, I don't care what it is, I just want a job. That was me 2 years ago. And if I'm completely honest, I have finally gotten to the point to where I'm not that person, only because of, it really had nothing to do with my military service. Nobody beat it in my head. It was kind of the way I was brought up, and it was, a man his whole job is to provide. And my great grandfather, he was a World War II vet. My grandfather, he was a police officer and a Marine. My father, I came from men that were very, very strong-willed and strong-minded, and they raised me that it's not about whether you love your job. It's you have a family to provide for, and there's no time to complain. So until I got into the LinkedIn community and kind of broadened my horizons on the influences I had, that I realized that you can actually do a job and actually enjoy doing it, and still provide for your family. And it's funny too that you're talking about the training development and things like that, because I right now am aviation side and the civilian side. And I see a lot of those jobs with the program analysts, the program developers, the training development. I see those a lot, even where I worked at. And there's definitely a need for it. And I wanted to kind of go back to the value portion of things, because I think that's kind of where me and Jeremy kind of have found our niche, kind of, we think, with the Veterans Roundtable. And it goes back to when I was reflecting back on, you know, what do I really want to do? You know, what makes me fulfilled, but also, you know, can provide value to other people. And as I look back throughout my life, I saw common themes, so why I did things like, and one of the things you said was to look back at your military career. When I look back at my military career, I wasn't the greatest sailor in the world. I was more focused on, you know, keeping things at home, you know, straight, and had a lot of issues with things like that with my marriage. So I didn't focus at work. But the one thing that meant a lot to me, and I'll never forget, was my time as honor guard. And because that goes beyond anything that I could ever do. It was, you know, any kind of military bearing I had, I tried to focus on, and, you know, having uniform inspection for an hour, and everything we did was just to give value to that family, or that, you know, and once I saw that, as I reflected back, I was like, that's what it is. That's my why. People talk about why a lot. My why is to, you know, provide value to other people. It's more about how can I serve other people? How can I provide for other people? Because that's what makes me fulfilled. Some people, they don't have that aspect.
Yeah.
But I wanted to thank you for that saying, you know, the value, find where the value is for yourself, but also for the company, how you can do that.
Just to kind of emphasize that before we move on to the next topic or whatever, I landed a great career and all that when I got out. I've never had passion for the technical side of things. I mean, I like turning wrenches, but I'm not passionate about being a mechanic. I was passionate about the leadership side and engaging people. And so this is what I enjoy. And so, you know, you can find a great job all day, but you'll still be searching for this, you know. So
Yeah.
I think we really hit that pretty well.
And the funny thing about it, too, and I say it to pretty much everybody me and Jeremy talks about. Jeremy, the first time when we talked about doing this, I asked him about being on video, and he said, I'm not the most comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because Jeremy now is engaging with people all the time, and, you know, over the phone, through video chats and things like that. But I think that goes back to when you find your thing, whatever you're passionate about, whatever word you want to use, your strengths start to overweigh your weaknesses to the aspect, because you're actually enjoying it. You have just a way of just taking over the things that make you uncomfortable. And it kind of ties into question number 3 we have for you, Ken, is if you can give us maybe 1 to 2, 3 things that you struggle with the most with transitioning.
So the biggest thing that has kept me up at night through the transition, and I've been planning my transition for a while. I dropped my papers 24 months out, and so I knew I wanted to retire for a minute.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that's kept me up at night really is the uncertainty. So a lot of people think that there is a level of uncertainty that we're comfortable with in the military, and that's true. But there's also a level of predictability that we're very comfortable with in the military.
Yeah.
Security.
And so here I am, 9 months away from a major life change, retiring from the military. 9 months away from moving back home to Kentucky, where I haven't lived 23 years.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm going to be doing yet. I know what I'm going to be doing. Pretty sure I know what I'm going to be doing. I just don't know where I'm going to be doing it yet.
Yeah.
So that is very disconcerting, because after November 30th, that predictable 1st and the 15th paycheck isn't gonna show up. Mm-hmm. Now it'll take a month or 2 for that predictable 1st of the month paycheck to show up with my retirement and whatever VA disability that comes with that, but it won't pay the bills.
Yeah.
So
I want to highlight.
it's a plan.
I want to highlight something very, very big here because we say transition, and my podcast mentor, he brought this up. He's 100% civilian, little military exposure, anything like that. He said, "Well, what is transition?" And people think it's job searching. Like, no, it's your life is going to flip upside down, and it's like that security blanket, that uniform that you've worn for, in your case, 20 plus years, it's gone. And that is terrifying. And so when we say transition, I hope people understand that it is a life transition. It's not job searching. It's so much more than that.
So much bigger.
But it's big. So I like that you put that into words very well. So
the one thing that I want to add to that, and I'm going to try my best to, I'm a metaphoric kind of person. I try to use metaphors. So to me, transitioning out of the military, for people that don't really understand, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, it's like moving to a new country and having to learn a new language and do everything else involved in moving to that new country.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit easier because, we're getting out of the military. You have other people that speak your language that are willing to support you. So it's probably not as hard as that. But when you think of the idea of, so if for me, who grew up in Texas, and if I moved somewhere like when I went to Okinawa, Japan, never in a million years thought I would go to Japan. I absolutely loved it. But in order for me to know where a bathroom was, I had no idea how to even talk to anybody, or find food or anything else. But slowly over time, you don't get any training before you go on deployment on how to even talk to the people you're going to be, interacting with. I had none at all, period. That transition process is pretty much like if they took you from your position in the civilian world, whatever it may be, you'd be the director of the entire company, CEO, and then they dropped you in the middle of India and told you to do the exact same job that you're doing now, but with no training on any of it. And a lot of people, that's how it was for me. Now, people you are a lot more planned out, and I'm very thankful for that and grateful for that, because that's huge. And I'm glad you said, I've been planning this for 24 months. And a lot of people, a retirement, the retirees, the people that have, put in that a huge amount of time, they have kind of an idea of, this is when I'm going to get out. I want to kind of speak to the people who are maybe just came in the Navy or have done 4 or done 6, and they're thinking about that next one. Start then. Please don't wait until you find out or somebody tells you, hey, you didn't get picked up like I did. Start building those connections, start a plan. And one of the best things, piece of advice, and I don't know who says it because I have a terrible memory. They told me the day you enlist into the military, you need to be planning for the day that you're going to get out. Yeah. And only because life is so unpredictable. And preparing the day you come in is not really that difficult, because all it starts with is making sure you still have those connections on the outside. And I speak about networking because that was what pretty much saved me, was building that network after I got out. So I wanted to just hit on that really hard, was like Kenneth said, prepare as soon as you can. For basically, in my idea, the worst thing that can happen, and then reverse engineer to the best thing that can happen.
Yeah, and another thing before we move on, you use that analogy like you're stepping into a new country and you don't speak the language. Well, that's where what we're trying to do is what if you had an interpreter and a local guide, So I think that's what needs to happen is, yes, you are stepping into a new country, learning a new language. You were military, not your civilian. Well, you need an interpreter. So that's very important that service members understand that. Go find your interpreters and
go to somebody. Go to somebody too, and I'm sure you've done this, Kenneth, that can take, and this I think is so huge. To go to somebody. A lot of people, we hear about the transition. What's it called? Like the relator, Jeremy, where they take your military skills and translate it to civilian.
I use crosswalks on ONET.
Yeah, crosswalks. So I think those are huge also, especially if you've spent, a large amount of time in the military. The civilian language kind of changes over time, and new jobs are added and things like that. So when you go to get out, even if you've only done 4, the job that you were really interested in the terminology might have changed. So it's really important to have somebody on the outside, veteran or civilian, that can pretty much translate jobs, that you're interested in to you. That way there's no language barrier, if that makes sense. It goes back to the learning the new language. So that's really great that you said that part of it. So, Ken, I wanted to
I will expound on that though, and especially when you talk about.
Go ahead, Ken. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. So I want to expound upon that a little bit as far as when you talk about skills translations. I'll say be very mindful and this is to anyone who is when you're doing that, to understand that the source of the source of the resource, and especially when you're talking about of your job in the military to civilian, because at best, they have a decent idea of what you do in your job, but most of the time it's very, very generalized. And a lot of people, when I say I'm an aviation electronics technician in the Navy, they're going to immediately try to point me toward those technical jobs, which I can do, but I really don't have a whole lot of interest in doing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So just balance that with what you want to do, because in the end, just like you volunteered to join the Navy, you are not bound to a particular civilian job once you leave just because of what you did in the Navy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like you said, you're not going to be in aviation anything. Most likely, you're going to be a training manager.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's one thing that I struggled with after 4 years and getting out, is till this day, literally to this day on LinkedIn and in my email, I get job opportunities for aviation structural mechanics. And it's a godsend, but it's also kind of a curse, because the way the aviation field works is they want a structure mechanic who has very detailed experience on a very detailed aircraft. And one of the aircraft that I worked on, which was the P-8 Poseidon, for those that understand that, and the P-3, they're really big aircraft, but they'll want you to have experience on an F-18 that's smaller than a P-8, a lot smaller. But for some reason, they don't understand that if you can work on a P-8, you can work on an F-18, you can work on whatever. That kind of ties into that whole aspect of those translators. Yeah, they do. The online ones, they do. They're very broad. Like to this day, I can type in what I did in the Navy. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing now. Like, I literally just got accepted into a software development job. I went from aviation to tech, and I had to do all of the work on my own. I had no training on the job, but it was something that I was passionate about, something that I want to do. And I had to go out and get those resources and find them. And there was no military translator that would have told me that my time as an aviation structure mechanic would set me up for a job in software development. So
that's the cool thing about the civilian world. You can set whatever goal you want and pretty much go get it.
You can do whatever you want to do. Yeah. So I want to had another question for you, Ken, if you don't mind. So what is something your idea on LinkedIn? I don't know how long you've been on LinkedIn, kind of your or social media, how it benefits veterans and service members if they use it in a positive light. What do you think the benefits are for that?
So the best benefit I can say is LinkedIn, especially, is look for groups of people. Look for groups that are related to the thing that you want to do, and reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out and engage, because really, up until about last back just after Christmas, I was on LinkedIn, but I wasn't really on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And so connecting with those groups and really starting to lean in on networking with people who can be good sources of advice. And, you know, not every person you network with, you don't have to network with them from the standpoint of this person's going to get me into my next job. Yeah. Sometimes this person may help you. Sometimes this person may know the person that'll get you in the next job, but sometimes this person may just give you a good perspective. And so that would be the best way to do it. And another thing I'll say, there is a lot of good people out there who have been on LinkedIn for a while and know how to use LinkedIn effectively. Mm-hmm. Reach out to them. A lot of them will mentor you and help you make your profile better, make your presence better, and they won't charge you money.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Be very wary of that person who approaches you that guarantees that they can write your LinkedIn profile and write your resume to the point where they will get you hired.
Yeah.
The only thing that's going to get you hired is you.
Yeah.
We always pitch the ultimate LinkedIn cheat sheet. Michael Quinn set that thing up, and it really just goes. I mean, you open that up, and it's comprehensive. It's got everything. But
yeah, and the thing about LinkedIn, and me and Jeremy, we're not LinkedIn kings. Like I'm not even close. My LinkedIn literally doesn't really talk about anything that I'm doing on my professional thing. It's more about how I can provide value to other people, because that goes back to fulfillment for me. So, I mean, I still get on there. Very rarely do I even talk about what I do. Like, a lot of people don't even know I work in aviation, or know that I'm going over to software development, or that I've been trying to learn that. That's kind of been, I mean, I have those conversations with software developers because I'm trying to learn. But the big thing that I want to key in on, and you kind of talked about it, Ken, when you get on LinkedIn or any social media, or in the real world with a conversation, if you can go into it, and this is what I've tried to do, go into the conversation or the relationship with what can I provide the other person instead of what can they provide me. And I will tell you this right now, there has been so many situations on LinkedIn where I will send a message to somebody because I just find what they're doing interesting. Like, super interesting. I have no idea really even what they do. Or I'll see a comment or a post, and I'm like, those that's somebody I want to know. And I'll send them a message, and I say, you know, hey, how are you? I hope you're doing great. I really love this comment. And is there anything I can do for you? And a lot of times I'll get that, no, not really, but thank you so much for just being authentic. And that's one thing that I want to really key in on. When you get if you do get on LinkedIn or social media or in the real world, after you get out, and not real world, but civilian world, or while you're still in, the relationships you build, they will never not be valuable in one way or another. But don't look at them about how they can give you value. Look about how you can give them, because and I've seen it so many times. Like, for example, with Ken, we've got Ken on the Veterans Roundtable, but me and Jeremy are literally learning from Ken as he's talking too, because we're still learning how to transition into. And that's what the big thing about the Veterans Roundtable is we want to put people out there that are wanting to, are trying to transition, but also have advice, because one, it can help people all over the world, but it's also helping me and Jeremy because we're not experts. So I just wanted to talk about that. Just look at the way you're going about. It goes back to mindset. How are you approaching conversations? How are you putting yourself out there? Are you doing it just to get something out of it, or are you really trying to build relationship? Because I promise you, if you're trying to just build relationship with like-minded people or people that interest you, I can tell you from example that has carried me so much farther in LinkedIn. I've had conversations with people that are in Australia, Korea, and we have nothing so much in common that people would think because we come from opposite sides of the world, but can have amazing conversations. So that's the power of LinkedIn and the power of networking. So I'll get off my rambling now. Sorry, guys.
Just to highlight a few things you're talking about. I'll give you one example that I think will help people understand how to approach LinkedIn and networking in general. When some people approach me because of the company that I work for, and they are basically like, "Are you hiring? Can you help me?" And I'm not a hiring manager. I don't, I'll refer people and try to push for people by all means, but I don't have the authority to say you're hired. But if somebody comes up to me seeking a handout, like, of course I'll be kind and yeah, maybe, you might get my attention. But when I'm on the phone with somebody and they're job searching and they just want to build relationships, and I see them helping other people and they're just genuinely interested in my story, I want to help that person get hired where I work all day because I want to work with that person. So when someone is genuine, authentic, and trying to help other people, I'm like, I want to be around that person all day, and I'll run that resume up to HR in a hurry. Whereas somebody, I'm job searching, will you help me? Maybe.
Yeah.
So I think I hope people understand that when you're approaching people on LinkedIn, like exactly what you're saying, you're building a relationship. You're not seeking a handout. So I did that pretty well.
Kent, do you have any thoughts on that aspect before we move on to the next thing?
No, I'll just say, like, especially with Jeremy, our connection on LinkedIn just kind of was incidental. We started messaging back and forth, and it's turned into, I'll call him in the middle of the afternoon and say, "Hey, man, I had this idea."
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then we'll talk for an hour about the idea. One of the things that we talked about the other day was about the fact that what would be really awesome down the line is to have the most comprehensive skills translator anybody has ever developed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And how you don't just enter your rate, but you enter your Navy enlisted classification where you were a PH structural mechanic, or you enter your MOS or your AFSC on the Air Force side. Whatever service you could enter that, and it would generate a series of relevant skills and a series of relevant areas of expertise that you could immediately translate into a civilian resume, or translate into matching with a job position that was out there. And so we talked about that. Obviously, that's something that would be, way down the line. But at the same time, one of the things that you see a lot is the fact that depending on the company, and even very mature major companies, they don't really understand the knowledge, skills, and abilities required to do the jobs in their operations.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I've talked to Jeremy about extensively, and one of the things where I'm very passionate about, is just because I'm a training manager, training professional, it goes beyond just designing and developing training for a particular job. Mm-hmm. It's analyzing those jobs and determining not only whether or not the training inside your organization is preparing the people to do the job, but then also, are your HR folks writing the jobs descriptions to meet the actual requirements of what the person's actually doing?
That is huge.
No, there's
and then, it is really, and this is where I see it very from a very different perspective than a lot of people talk about. I can see it from the applicant to the training to the production to the actual doing the job on the line. And then also companies can do that same analysis and determine where their redundancies are. So now you get into the lean and the lean aspects of it. Everybody talks about lean and Six Sigma. Well, part of the big part of lean is removing those redundancies. But if you don't really understand what your different jobs are actually doing, then you don't know what those redundancies. So there's a value stream from that not just from the source to the finished product in the manufacturing process. There's a value stream in the people process.
Yep.
And that value stream starts with understanding what your jobs are, what the skill, the skill, knowledge, skills, and abilities are required to do those jobs, orienting your organization's training program to those jobs, orienting your hiring to those jobs, and seeking out the applicants that actually be able to come in, be trained, and perform those jobs well.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that two things actually I want to talk about that is for someone like you who understands all of that, for a company, when you come out of the military, I think one of the big reasons they would want to grab somebody like you is because you have the amount of perspective that you have about all of it. So I see it all the time in the aviation field. I will have people call me as an applicant. They'll call me asking me if I want a job and have absolutely no idea, zero, about what I should even be capable of. Like if I wanted to, I could literally just be like, yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I've done that. And they don't even know how to ask a follow-up question to really know if I do. So I think that is huge, Ken. And I kind of wanted to wrap up that question that we had about LinkedIn with the power of networking. Is me and Jeremy have known each other, Jeremy, for what, about a month now?
Yeah, maybe closer to 2
months. Yeah, and look at what we're doing now together. That's the power of LinkedIn. If you're on it to do more than just try to get something for yourself or get a job.
Yeah.
This everything that we're doing now, is because we're two guys, and Ken also involved is somebody, we're just trying to provide value to other people.
Yeah.
Anyway,
when you talk networking in LinkedIn, and you talk about the gaps that exist from, I've seen where you just know that this person can do this job. I see it. This person could come here and succeed. And then trying to get that person that will succeed in that job that you're looking at. And there's this huge gap there. But if you've networked, if you've built a relationship like we're building, if you've been on the phone, if you know what somebody's truly about, then as you try to bridge all those gaps and get from this point to this point, from person to employee, and you have to go through those HR hurdles and everything else in between, if the relationship is there, then you can kind of push through those, so that's the power of networking, because there are huge gaps in the HR hiring process. There are a lot of gaps there, but if the relationship is strong, then somebody may be willing to push through that whole inefficient system and be your advocate. So there's a ton of that's the power of networking. So you're able to navigate the system.
And people, in my opinion, people, in my opinion, so what we talk about with the Veterans Roundtable is being a bridge, right? So being something that can get a service member from here to there in the veteran space, whatever it may be. That's what our goal is. But literally through LinkedIn, other people will become the bridge to be the bridge between that gap that you're trying to cross. And a lot of times it comes when you're not expecting it. If you go in with no expectation other than you trying to build a relationship with somebody, for example, me and Jeremy have been talking about creating a logo, and I don't even know how the conversation started yesterday on Instagram. It started because we were trying to help Jeremiah Hill, find employment and getting, the things he was looking for. And I brought it up to a fellow connection of mine through Instagram. And I don't even know how I brought up a logo. And he was like, oh, you realize we do digital design on the side too. And I was like, oh, wow, and it's just like when you have those connections that they respect you, you respect them. And it's more about how you can, grow the relationship. It's so much bigger than, a one-sided deal. But I kind of want to get back to Ken and you kind of spoke about it, Ken, and Jeremy, I really want to key in on the things that he talks about, what he can provide a company, because that's the final part of the show to me, is letting, Ken just completely sell himself on what he wants to do when he gets out.
All right, so I talked a little bit about it, during the last question when we talked about that aspect of being able to analyze any job function or any position in the company and being able to orient the training program toward it. But then also along with that, I have a goal in mind, and that goal is to make whatever organization I step into better, not because they're doing it wrong, but just because I bring my perspective to bridge those gaps between the production, the training, and the HR, to the point where there is and it's a popular term and I don't use it much, but there's a synergy between the gaps, and to be able to not take that one step further and help companies that maybe struggle to understand, hey, we really want to hire veterans, but we don't know why we're not getting that many veterans. Well, a lot of times that starts with how you're writing your jobs. How are you going after that veteran talent? And if you're writing those jobs and those requirements are not in line with the jobs that you're actually doing, then you're going to scare people away. Not just veteran talent, but qualified talent in general.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And the way I look at it, the value that I would bring to any organization is to be able to take their training programs and really make them effective, because everything has a cost. You spend money on recruiting people, you spend money on training people, and you spend money on producing the end product of whatever your organization is. Well, if your training and your hiring isn't in line with what the product that you're producing, then you're not making the best use of the money you are spending on your training and your hiring. Because if your training program isn't preparing your person that you hired to step on the floor after the requisite amount of training to start doing the job, then your training program is not being as effective as it could be.
So one thing I wanted to ask you, Kenneth, if you don't mind, I know Jeremy, actually, I think you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, there's a huge need for that, and I've seen it. And you talked about synergy, and I've seen when people need talent, can't figure out why they're not getting the talent they need, and you get into the market and all that, but just I've seen people struggle with that problem. So someone with your experience and insight for how much exposure and kind of the big picture that you have with the military with that, there is a huge need for that. I mean, I've seen these meetings where people are, we need talent and we're not getting it. What's wrong? And there's a lot wrong. It's like you said, you've got this in the job description, but that doesn't match what's happening on the floor, so it's a very real problem, and you have a really unique insight into it. And I think that's really, really cool. And there's a lot of potential for you because of that.
So the one thing, and I know we're getting close on time here, that I really want, Kenneth, if you will, to key in on, is there a specific industry, and I know you spoke about Kentucky, you said going back there. So is there industry or company that you've really kind of looked into, only because there's going to be people that watch this and they're going to be like, oh, hey, I work in that industry. So, for example, like if you wanted to stay aviation and work in training development, I don't know people in Kentucky, but I know people pretty much all over the country in aviation because I work in it myself. And I know people that work in HR and training development in aviation. So if you could try to really, in a short amount of words, kind of just give us the industry or company that you're interested in, and how we can best help you in your transition in that, regard.
So the industries that I'm targeting are primarily also because of the location that I'm settling in. So I'm settling in central in Kentucky, close to
Okay.
Southern Indiana. So there's a huge manufacturing production base there.
Okay.
And especially when you talk about what I do, really to be able to do it and do it well, manufacturing is one of the big targets of that, because really that has a series of defined tasks that you can really get down into the weeds with. It's a little harder with some of the other industries like financial services. It can't be done, but I'm really focusing on that manufacturing production type organization that has a set series of job tasks. And I'll give you an example, like Toyota. And Jeremy and I have talked about like Toyota, the automobile industry, and whether it's the prime that's producing the cars, or the upstream supplier that's producing the bodies for the cars, or the accessories for the cars. That's an industry that really I could step into, and really I know I could make a lot better. Jeremy and I have talked about this a lot, especially at Toyota, and so that's my target.
Okay.
Aviation has its own sets of challenges.
Yeah, and military translates so well to manufacturing. Just you think about production teams, squadrons, like the parallels are there. It's the hierarchy, the structure of everything. This team needs to accomplish this task, and they're part of this bigger group, and each person has their individual function. Is really interesting to kind of pick the themes out and see how well it translates. So you're on the right track. I think obviously manufacturing's
I agree with that 100%, and I don't actually even know anything about manufacturing or production, but I agree with it because I've talked to Jeremy about it. And it's funny because Jeremy has talked about a lot of those little gaps and what he's trying to do in situations. And it's funny that we have you on, Kenneth, because you can bridge those gaps for a lot of people, in the civilian world. And I think you probably do it a lot, like you said, in the military now. So I would love to have a follow-up. And, of course, we're going to be engaging with you throughout the process because we want to really see you grow, and we think you can help a lot of people. But I know we're getting close on time. Jeremy, is there anything final you would like to say so we can wrap up, not keep Kenneth for forever?
No, I just want to echo what you said. We're here every step of the way through your transition. All the ups and the downs and the stress and the good times and the bad. Lean on us. Another big piece of networking here. You have two well-grown, multi-years in the process kind of networks on LinkedIn right here. So as you get closer and we're helping you achieve your goals, here we are to kind of offer everything.
And I appreciate you coming on, Kenneth, because I've honestly learned a lot from you in the matter of time that we've talked. So I'm taking notes from you as you're talking. So I really appreciate it. I don't want you to think that, or anybody to think that we're on here trying to tell everybody how to do things. We're honestly taking notes ourselves because we're just trying to learn. So we're trying to be, like I said, that bridge and that place where everybody can come together and learn from each other.
Absolutely.
So, Kenneth, if you have any final things you'd like to say, I thank you so very much for coming on, and I look forward to seeing you grow and really kill it once you get out to the civilian world.
Anything to
No,
add?
I appreciate you guys having me on. Look forward to engaging with you guys some more, and I hope that what I've talked about today, that someone else that's watching this can take what I've said and apply it to their own transition. I am by no means marketing myself as a transition expert, but all I can do is tell my story.
Yep. You've already helped me, so I appreciate that, and you've helped Jeremy. So that's two people right there. You're creating the ripple effect that Jeremiah talked about in the last episode. So I really appreciate that, Kenneth, because you could have come on here and say, "Woe me, my life is terrible, my transition is terrible," but you're literally giving advice. So I appreciate it. Jeremy, I think we're pretty much done here. Like I said, the Veterans Roundtable, we're here to assist any way we can. We'd love to have you come on and speak to us, whether you're a service member, you're a veteran organization. I'm excited, man. This is going great.
Good stuff, guys. Anything else?
I'm good.
All right.
That's it.